Okay.
I move that we reconvene as the council and seal the executive session minutes.
Is it 7 yet?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I need to report out a vote of 4-1 to accept payment tendered by Attorney Grady in the amount of $8,690.27 as refunded on an advance paid to him to foreclose tax titles on various properties and to resolve the matter. Okay.
You got to announce the vote, I think. About
He did.
how
He
they voted.
You have to say who voted?
I think you do.
Each person?
I said 4-1.
Did you explain who was opposed?
No, I didn't.
Do you have to?
I don't know.
You
Do
don't
I?
have to, but you certainly can.
Okay.
So far.
Councilor Hurst voted for it. Councilor Thompson voted for it. I voted for it. Barbara did not vote for it. And David Husband did vote for it. To resolve the issue that's been going on since 2006. So, anyway. I want to begin the Hopkinton Town Council meeting of October 7th, 2013 with a moment of silent meditation and salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first order of business is to sit as, I need a motion to sit as licensing board, please.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor?
Seconded.
Any second? Oh, I'm sorry,
Second.
David. All those in favor?
Aye.
First up is the Class F liquor license. Open a hearing on an application for a Class F liquor license filed by the Friends of the Land Trust for an event scheduled for Thursday, November 7th, 2013, to be held at the Mill on Spring Street, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, from 5:30 to 8 p.m. Is the applicant present? No applicant present? Okay. Is the application complete, Lisa?
Yes,
What,
to
you
the
know?
extent that it doesn't give the exact address in Spring Street, but I was going to ask the applicant to provide that when he was here.
Okay, she's not here. Okay.
So you could continue it if you wish, or you could go on with it.
Okay, I think we could probably muster a vote on this, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's been done before.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
was
it's
going
not
to
a
say.
big
We
deal.
have done this
Right
before.
there in Moscow, right?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application for a Class F liquor license for the Friends of the Land Trust for an event scheduled for Thursday, November 7th, to be held at the Mill on Spring Street, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, from 5:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. with the fee waivers and the official address added.
Okay, any second? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Although it's great fun.
The only thing I can add is hopefully, Lisa, they can get us some tickets, I guess, or, because I'd be interested in going. So,
I move we adjourn as a licensing board and reconvene as a council.
Second.
Tickets
Okay.
that we'll pay for.
yes, exactly. Yeah, tickets will pay
That
for
didn't
it.
sound right.
Well, you know what I mean.
Didn't sound good. Get us some tickets.
Well,
Oh, God.
I didn't bring my checkbook tonight. But, okay, motion made and seconded. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda,
I'd
approved
like
special.
to
Okay, that's
pull
good.
all the council minutes. I don't think, I made the corrections in,
I can read them off if you like.
okay.
I'd like to pull September 30, September 16.
Okay.
Are you also pulling September 3?
Yeah, I don't think I had a change in that one, but why don't you pull all of them and we can.
All right, then I'd like to approve the abatements submitted by the tax assessor, approve refunds submitted by the tax collector.
Seconded.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I think one of them I didn't find any
All right, I can
mistakes.
read off
Okay.
the changes that you would like to see. On September 3rd,
Oh.
Good page.
page 3, about the spelling of Halloween. On page 4, the same thing. 4 lines up from the bottom, Halloween is spelled incorrectly. And on page 12, spelling of the individuals that Councilor Hurst adjourned in memory of would be Dale K. Jansen and Audrey R. Gruber.
Yes.
Correct. Then on September 16th, page 5, council and the council report is spelled with a C and it should be council as those are
And page 8.
corrections, okay, and page 8.
And page 8, at the top where it says a motion, the last sentence in the motion, and the individuals.
The last sentence.
Oh,
And the
GIV.
individuals, yeah.
Individual.
Yeah.
That's all.
Actually, it's a plural.
Plural.
It is a plural.
No, it's misspelled.
Oh, I see.
There's a U in there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
an
yeah.
I.
With these changes, I move all.
No,
these-
no, I have changes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I pulled them too.
All right.
Sorry.
Yes, Bobby.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. September 30th, page 2. Fourth line down. Property owned by the SCAT Foundation. Could you have that spelled out? I don't even remember what it is, and I doubt in future years we'll know who that is.
Okay.
And also on the same page, second paragraph from the bottom, second line from the bottom, it's herein lies the reason, rather than here lies. And September 16, no, never mind. On that one. That's all.
Okay.
I just want,
Motion to,
I just want to say that it's tough for the clerks to take minutes, and I appreciate their work, and I know sometimes we appear to be picky, but I do appreciate
They are draft for a reason.
I
So
make a
appreciate your
motion
work.
to approve the special town council meeting minutes of September 30th, 2013, town council meeting minutes of September 16th, 2013, and town council meeting minutes of September 3rd, 2013,
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
With
Aye.
correction.
Aye.
with corrections.
Corrections, yeah. Okay, great. Next up is the first public forum. Anyone out there wishing to be heard? Okay. Next on the agenda is Council President Report. I got a couple things I just wanted to update some folks on. I attended the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns dinner on Thursday, September 26th at the Crown Plaza. Same old stuff, you know, talking with various public officials throughout the state. I did meet the new administrator in Richmond. He seemed like a pretty good guy. I offered our experienced town manager, Bill McGarry's expertise if he ever needed to reach out. Next, I did send another email to Congressman Langevin's office regarding the Tier 2 generator grant that was omitted from our Tier 1 request. And they said nothing has happened yet. It was supposed to happen at the end of September, so I'm beginning to think that there's a little political jockeying going back and forth. I'm getting some ignore emails and stuff like that, so I'll be persistent on that going forward more. Next on under my report was Bill, the manager, and I kind of working under the radar to kind of see about buying our street lights from National Grid. We got an inventory list townwide of all our street lights, and it was passed by the General Assembly to kind of have the towns take over that. And we've got the inventory list. Next, it's a work in progress. It's going to be a long process, but Bill and I are working to that end. And I think the next step is Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, the Public Utilities Commission's got to set the tariff for some of that going forward.
When are we
That's-
discussing it?
Well, the public...
Because I'd like to
Yeah, oh,
discuss
yeah,
it.
yeah. We've got a bunch of things we've got to do, but I think the next thing is December 15th. I think the Public Utilities Commission is voting on the tariff. And then, aside from that, we actually have to get from National Grid, after receiving the inventory list, is how much was the initial cost of the light and the depreciation schedule, so we can figure out how much it's going to cost. And so, again, I'm going to put it on as a full-blown agenda
Right.
so we can kind of delve into it. I just want to keep folks updated as to kind of what's happening initially. It's a lot of stuff. So, but we'll certainly put it on for a full-blown agenda item pretty soon when we have some more concrete numbers.
I think-
so we can determine costs and whatnot. But
Right, and-
it's going to be a savings, I think.
And difficulties.
Yeah.
I'm a lighting designer, I deal with streetlights, and so does Don Simmons of our planning board. There are some other issues that you do need to address if you're going to even consider maintaining and correcting and redoing the National Grid streetlights. It'll be
Yeah.
extraordinarily expensive because they do not want to do the LEDs, which
Well,
is what all the towns want. and it's a fortune to replace the fixture and the lamp.
Well,
We need to
yeah.
discuss it.
Well, that'll be on the agenda,
Yeah,
but I'm
that
just
would be
giving
great.
everybody just an update. Next up is the upcoming town budget. I kind of wanted the town manager and the department heads to kind of look early enough at our budget to look at possible savings that we can maybe incur that would offset possibly if we get slammed by Charahoe budget. So I'm just asking these folks to look at the budgets at this point. I know it's 3 months early, but look for some savings that we can maybe use to counteract any loss in revenue or enrollment calculations that worsen for the town. So we're just going to be looking at that a little bit sooner than later, so that we're not surprised and we're prepared for our budget discussions when it comes to the first of the year. So that's the last thing under my report. Next on the agenda is the town manager report. Bill McGarry.
Thank you. Just very briefly, on September 27th, Jim Lamphere and I attended a meeting along with 8 other individuals involved in the Canachet Woods subdivision project. This meeting was held at the Solicitor's Office of Providence. The purpose of the meeting was to identify all of the remaining work that needed to be completed on Hopkinton Hill Road in the Canachet Woods subdivision. Assistant Town Solicitor Scott Levesque chaired the meeting, which was very productive. The contractor, developer, they're all in attendance, and they agreed to complete the remaining work the contractor did on Hopkinton Hill Road within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And work on Cardinal Lane still needs to be completed too, but we're addressing that area of the subdivision as we move forward. So we're just waiting to see how much work that the contractor will complete within the next 3 weeks or so, and then we're going to move forward from there. But he was very cooperative, and the meeting that was chaired by Assistant Town Solicitor Scott Levesque, he really did a nice job controlling that meeting. So we're optimistic, we're cautiously optimistic that we can get that part of the project resolved. And lastly, on October 1st, Laura Kenyon and I attended a Rhode Island Department of Revenue Finance seminar meeting at the Rhode Island Department of Administration in Providence. And basically the seminar consisted of presentations on municipal finance, OPEBs, SEC disclosure requirements and the minimum security market, which is bonding, financial reporting requirements for pension plans, and the municipal road and bridge project grant.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody have a quick comment?
I have a question on the Canachet Woods Hopkinton Hill Road. I'm assuming that meeting with Scott Levesque was specifically to discuss the town pulling the bond if they do not complete their work in certainly they've been less than timely, but in a fashion. Is that something that that the town and our solicitors are at least addressing? You know, hopefully things will be done, but if it isn't done, are we looking at pulling that bond so we can get them accomplished?
The bond's been called.
I'm sorry?
Is that what you said, Barbara? You want to know if the bond's going to be called?
No, I said if that was a discussion about the bond being called.
Yeah, it's been called.
It's been cool.
It's been called.
Yes.
Great.
Anyone else have any questions for
Thank
Bill?
you.
Hey, Bill, I just had one quick question on the Canachet Woods. I mean, do you think, based on the discussion that you guys had, that you mentioned, that they may be able to turn over the road to the town, maybe by the end of the year? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I don't have the answer to that question. It depends on the amount of work that they do to our satisfaction and how long it takes them to complete that. But certainly moving against the bond got their attention.
Good deal.
And as a result, the meeting was very productive, and everybody from all sides were there. And like I said, if they said that, you know, they promised they were going to do what they were supposed to do, and we're just waiting to see if they do what they said they were going to do.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's the, you know, pulling the bond is out there, but we're certainly going to give them the opportunity to resolve the remaining unfinished work to move the thing along. Then they'll make a request from the town to have the road accepted, and then we'll take it from there.
It was women's development there? I can't remember.
They were not, no.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Frank,
Yes, Dave.
Bill, enlighten me how this works. How do we provide a certificate of occupancy to buildings that isn't on a town-approved road yet? In other words, is that what's happened? In other words, the roads aren't up to snuff, they're not town approved yet because they're not the quality that we want. But we've allowed people to live on this road.
Because they're private.
How does that system
Bill
work?
can answer the question.
I would defer to the town solicitor, but I don't think you can hold up a building permit based on the fact that
It's a private road.
the roads have
effectively,
not been completed, because it's not
at this point.
it's privately owned.
Right, at this
I
point,
thought
it's a
a
private road.
building lot had to have a certain amount of footage on a
They do.
town-approved road.
They do.
So if the, no, it doesn't have to. You
Does
say no.
not have to be a town-approved road. It's private. If somebody owns
private
lands and
road.
wants to build a compound,
But
you'll
indeed,
need
they still need their land footage, the footage on the road.
the frontage, yeah,
They
that's
need the
different.
frontage,
That's a
yes.
totally separate
But it
issue.
is, it's a private road right now. It is not a town road yet until it
Right.
comes up to our standards.
But we've given them a CO for those, to live there.
Yeah, but people
Yeah.
have COs to live in buildings on private roads all the time.
Okay,
Yes, it's not a town issue.
Exactly, not at the moment.
okay.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Okay.
I'm all set.
Okay. Next on the agenda, under new business, is to discuss and consider awarding a bid to Mason and Associates Incorporated for the rewriting and updating of the town zoning ordinances for the sum of $36,915. Bill McGarry.
I'll just provide a brief introduction with respect to the zoning ordinance revisions. On August 11th, the town advertised an RFP for the rewriting and updating of the town zoning ordinances. A mandatory pre-bid conference was held on August 19th. On August 29th, the town received one bid from Masons and Associates of Plainfield Pike and North Situate for the sum of $36,915 for the following zoning ordinance revision work, and you can see them listed, each one of the individual bullets on your report. The most important one was, the next to the last one, was the rewrite and update of the zoning ordinances. Upon receipt of the bid submission by Mason and Associates, I forward copies to the town council president, the planning board chair, the zoning board chair, the town planner, the building and zoning inspector, and myself. And each of those individuals reviewed the proposal to ensure that it met all the specifications of the RFP. And after a thorough review, the individuals were satisfied that the proposal met all the town's specifications and standards. To take it a step further, on September 24th, Planner Jim Lampier and Brad Ward and myself met with Chief Planner Dave Westcott in the Town Hall Council chambers to discuss his proposal and ensure that he and his agency were clear on the extent and scope of the project. He advised that he fully understood what was expected and had prior experience working with the town in developing its comprehensive plan and also in the earth excavation ordinance. He's also very familiar with the town zoning ordinances and the town's expectations of the work to be done. He is going to be assisted by Attorney Nancy Latendre, who's going to serve as the firm's legal counsel on the project. After considerable discussion, the town staff, all 6 individuals, and I recommend that the council award the rewriting and updating of the town zoning ordinances to Mason and Associates for the sum of $36,915. And just finally, the town fully intends to have the council, the solicitor's office, the planning board, zoning board, and staff heavily involved in the development of these ordinance revisions. And I've asked Dave Westcott and Planner Jim Lampier to be present tonight in case the council had any questions.
Thank you, Bill. All right, does anyone have any questions regarding this contract?
I just think it's interesting, we only had one bid. And, I mean, it's the way it is.
I'm glad we got that one, though.
If I'd known that beforehand, I might have come in higher.
But,
Good comeback.
I think-
Anyway, thanks. Yeah, Bob.
I think it's just fabulous. We've worked with you before. It has always been a very good working relationship. I have heard that Ms. Latendra is just excellent, and I'm so glad we have her on staff as well. But I am very happy to welcome you. This will be a real pleasure. You've always been very amenable to work with the town as the town would like. and I really appreciate that. Nobody pushes through something that we don't want as a rural community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your vote of confidence. With my planning expertise, her legal expertise,
Come to the
and
podium, please.
I'm sorry, I don't want to delay the action. I just want to say that with my planning expertise and Nancy's legal expertise and your understanding and expertise of the community, I'm sure we can work up a product that we can all be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes.
I move that we award the bid to Mason and Associates, Inc. for the rewriting and updating of the town's zoning ordinances for the sum of $36,000.
Is there a question?
Yes.
Dorothy,
So I
please.
can still finish, $36,915.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Wait a minute,
No,
we're
no,
still
no,
doing
we
discussion.
We can still discuss.
I just wanted to, I guess I want to be assured that these will be available in electronic format and can be accessed on the web,
I'm not sure.
on the town web.
Yes.
Mr. Westcott, could you talk about that, please? Is that your only question, Dorothy?
That's my only question, yes.
Thank you so much for your question. Absolutely, I think the intent here is to make sure we have something that's very user-friendly. So if you want to know what you can do with your property, you can click on the page and you can find the pieces that apply to your property right off, I'm sorry, I don't mean to point at you. They find your property right away and figure out how zoning applies to you. We want every citizen in town to be able to do that. So absolutely, thank you for your question.
Okay, thank you. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor of awarding the grant to Mason and Associates? The money, the bid to...
Aye.
Thank you.
If we could, I'd like to suggest that we move the, under new business, discuss and comments rather in reference to the Sun article and the related letter to the editor concerning the Charahoe School Committee meeting, and that way we won't keep these folks up late. So could we move that up?
Sure.
Yeah,
Second.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we're going to discuss that now. Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I had prepared a statement regarding the article. When I read it in the Westerly Sun on September 27th, I was a little angry, and I did not attend the meeting, but I prepared a statement kind of explaining at least my thoughts about what had happened at that school committee meeting. So if you guys can just bear with me, and I know everyone else has some things they want to spend some time with on this as well. But I just wanted to discuss the agenda item on the school committee meeting regarding whether a replacement principal was needed for Ashaway Elementary. I wouldn't normally comment publicly on such matters, but felt compelled to do so after hearing what events took place on the school committee meeting of September 24th. When I first heard that the agenda item would appear for discussion, I was concerned for the residents of Ashaway. I gave Superintendent Ritchie a call to find out his thoughts on whether it may have his support. Superintendent Ritchie did tell me that he believes each school should have a principal and he would not support not having one at Ashaway Elementary. Unfortunately, I could not attend the school committee meeting because I had some other commitments. I think the principal vacancy at Ashaway Elementary School certainly was a legitimate agenda item given the current circumstances and recent rejection of the school budget. I don't think, however, the agenda item was purposely listed to bait the residents, or at least I hope it wasn't. What I take exception to is the committee member Cardozo from Richmond taking our residents from Hopkinton to task about how we always reject the school budget. Budget outcomes, whether they pass or fail, should not have it been brought up. The issue was, can we, as a community, function with only one principal at 2 elementary schools in Hopkinton? That's the issue. That issue should have been debated, pros and cons. We all know what the cost is of a principal, but it should have been debated on its merits, whether it was good or not. Whether we, as a town, vote down the school budget had no ability to be in that discussion, as far as I'm concerned. But to hold the residents hostage on a school budget that got overwhelmingly defeated was wrong. I want to remind committee member Cardozo from Richmond that his own town voted roughly the same as Hopkinton did regarding the recent school budget. The residents from Richmond rejected the school budget overwhelmingly. And also, I'm wondering if committee member Cardozo even knows how the residents voted. They could have voted for the budget for all he knew. Also, I want to remind the school committee member, committee member Cardozo, that Richmond Elementary School has 2 principals, not 1. In closing, I want to publicly say that I'm sorry that our residents felt the meeting was turned around to blame our town for the consistent school budget rejections. This should not have happened. I also am glad that the residents of Ashaway will soon have a principal at the school to prepare the children for the vigors of middle school. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Could you, just for the audience and for the camera, could you explain what you meant by Richmond having two principals, so people would
Yeah,
understand?
Richmond has two principals. They have a principal and an assistant principal. So they don't have two full principals,
And
but
Hope
they
Valley and Ashaway have,
each have one principal.
and no assistant.
And no assistant, correct, yeah. So, anyway, I'm glad that the vote went that way, that they'll have a principal soon at some point, and it was overwhelming, it was a unanimous vote. So, that's that. Sometimes it's not about money. I know oftentimes we go over this budget with the school about money, and this is more about the education of the kids and the community in Ashaway, and I felt that I needed to say something publicly on this. And thank you very much. Who wants to talk next about it?
I'll talk. I got several notes, and I'm not going to ramble on. As you know that, and most of you probably know that I did have a letter published in the Westerly Sun. I did not attend the meeting in question. First of all, when you're a councilman or a school committee member, you're a political leader. There's a professional dimension to education, and there's a political dimension. And what Mr. Cardozo has to, as well as we on this council, is we have to have the feeling of the community, and also, not that we have to agree, but we have an obligation to put forth our opinion in a very objective manner. And we should also know our communities. I have been talking about a management study for a long time. I don't think I knew about the two principals at Richmond, but it would seem logical that when you have a budget defeat, and the school committee has the total parameters of deciding the line items, that doesn't go to the council, and it would seem to me is, why didn't they talk about Hope Valley and Richmond or Charleston? What they really have to do is have an outside management study, so we don't get into these type of things. Somebody that doesn't have a dog in the fight, that understands education, to make a recommendation, and not, but it clearly appears that people were baited, because by Mr. Cardozo's own words, if they were accurately reported in the press, they were more or less baited because he said they wanted to get people there. So, and to specifically put Hopkinton there, instead of saying the allocation of principals or assistant principals is the line item, that would have been more appropriate in deciding what the staffing needs were at the individual schools, not to single out Hopkinton. So it appears that Hopkinton clearly was singled out. And one of the things there's two other things I'll say, and I won't cover everything. Number one, the impact of Charahoe budgets. The identical family, same household income, same type of house varies on different towns. And this individual budget of our taxpayers in our town, the Charahoe budget impacts them differently when they have the same financial situation. And the only thing I'm going to say is, years ago when a Charahoe budget was rejected, and I think they probably still have it, is they had something called fact-finding, where they went to the state and they had to prove they could not live with the budget adopted. So what I like to know from the Charahoe School Committee is, I like to know why they can't live or adequately live with a budget that was adopted by the taxpayers. And that question, I don't think it's been answered. And that's generally, and I won't take any more of your time, but I
Stick to the agenda item, yeah.
But I mean, I am, because it's about the budget and Hopkins rejecting the budget, and Richmond clearly did, and Charleston approved it, but Charleston's share was very low. So anyways, I'm not going to list my laundry list, but any of these would be fair game because they're part of the budget, the potential budget, in electoral things. So I won't say any more, but I think I covered pretty much. But I really have, I wouldn't give Mr. Cardozo a pass because it looks like Hopkins was definitely singled out.
Thanks, Scott. Sylvia.
And I'd like to mention that we've got a former school committee member here in the audience, and we've got a current school committee member here. It very much seemed to be about money, and the fact that Hopkinton, we've been over there talking to them about their budget, even when it didn't impact us, even in a year it didn't impact us. And I won't go into all the reasons why, and we all know why, but the bottom line is, years and years and years ago, I'll give you a couple of examples. When it, I believe, let me preface it with, at the school committee meeting, there was an issue brought up, and it amounts to money. Oh, Hopkinton has 2 elementary schools, and I've been hearing about that actually ever since the omnibus meeting. I'm sure we heard that. And there've been talk of it, that it's not right, and we're always complaining about the budget, yet we have two elementary schools. You know, years ago, when the high school was built, if you want to talk about how much money goes where and everything, Hopkinton actually paid 50% to get the high school built. When the Cherahoe Exit and Expansion Committee was formed, and Georgia, who's here tonight, was on that committee, there are volumes of, I think there's 4 or 5 volumes of data and information that they collected during their work when Charlestown was thinking about exiting. And in there has a great deal of the budgetary information that goes back many, many years. And when I looked at this, and when I looked at it, it was about 4 years ago. I think it was just 4 years ago. And I decided to add up where the money was going. And this was just buildings. I was looking at buildings, where there was a new roof or whatever. And I added it up because there were a lot of complaints about things here and there and what's being fair. And I learned that Charlestown, for instance, they had spent, when I added it all up, their elementary school was actually, the school had actually put in $1 million more than they had in Hopkinton, and $1 million more than they had in the Richmond school. So I was like, okay. Because Richmond was, because Charlestown was complaining. So I decided to add up some things. And then there's another example of, over the years, when Hopkinton wanted to do their water line, and we wanted the water line to go up to the Hope Valley School. The town of Hopkinton paid for that, and to go up to the school, and the school chipped in $9,000 to help with the cost of that. Richmond, when they wanted to hook up to their water line, they received hundreds of thousands of dollars for their water line. Now, I'm bringing it all up because there are complaints made about, oh, and the Hope Valley bricks, and it's costing us too much, they have 2 schools. Well, guess what? The Hope Valley bricks and the expense they brought us up to what they've spent elsewhere. So in the end, maybe 1 year, one school gets more, and another year, or 10 years later, another school gets more. This is foolish. It really is petty. And I think Scott said it, and I think you said it, and I think we're all in the same, line here, that we need those. We've got good school committee members over there. You get a few that say things and whatever, but the bottom line is we need our school committee members, the good ones over there, to try to do the best they can to get the few that come up with this foolishness, admonish them, talk to them, get them on the right path. It's not our job, it's kind of their job. And if they want to do something with our schools, then do the analysis, do the management study, base it on objective information, not on the fact that Hopkinton voted down the budget and we're going to make them pay. It shouldn't be that way.
Right. I agree. Thanks, Sylvia. Barbara?
Basically, I agree with my fellow counselors. I don't have anything to add along that line. I do believe Mr. Cardozo was rude, inconsiderate, and thoughtless. These parents, most of them from Hopkinton, are supportive of the school and should be thanked for their concerns and their activism, not maligned. They were wonderful that they were there. There was a number of them, and I really thank them. I thought that was marvelous that they came and they were concerned. I have no problems with the school principals. Richmond reasonably has a principal and an assistant principal because they have almost 600 children in one school. Both Hope Valley and Ashaway have 200 to 300 per school. So the balance with the need of the additional principal or assistant principal at Richmond is more than necessary. I have never been against that. I have always approved that. It really has nothing to do with that item on the agenda. It was ridiculous. I understand it could have been brought up, but I think it overall was a totally ludicrous position by Mr. Cardoza.
Thank you, Bob. David?
That was, Mr. Cardoza's agenda item was nothing but a cheap shot. And if he wants to get after Hopkinton for turning down the budget, school budget, several times over, he's got to look at the budget, because the people of Hopkinton and the people of Richmond also are not stupid. That budget is fat. It's been fat every year, and the surplus shows it. Every year there's a huge surplus, and every year they tell us they're cutting it to the quick, and it's just not true. So to get after us for rejecting the budget by going after us about the principal at Ashway School is just a cheap shot. That's all I've got to say.
Thanks, David. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Next on the
You know,
agenda.
you got people in the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Julia.
I was glad that Mrs. Thompson brought up the fact that Hopkinton for a number of years paid half or more of the budget at Charahoe, and now the numbers are changing as far as the kids go, and some of the other towns have got more children or and they're having to pay, and we're seeing their restlessness, and we've had it for a long time because we have paid the lion's share. One of the things I just wanted to get on the record tonight was that they have got a problem over there with the fact that Hopkinton has 2 schools. We had 2 schools because we had the number of kids to support them. But I want to tell you that I believe that our schools are in the right place. They're in the villages, and they're right where they belong. And when we did surveys before and they wanted to build a new elementary school down on 95, down on Wellstown Road, we rejected it. And we rejected it because we didn't want it down there. We like our elementaries right where they are, in the villages, where the kids are, where the fire departments are, and where we have public water at Hope Valley, which you can't get anywhere else, and where we have a gas supply of natural gas that comes in from Westerly to the Ashaway School for heat. Those 2 things are enormous assets. And if you go build a new school, you're not going to have those kind of things. The other thing you're going to have is you're going to have more transportation costs when you're busing kids longer distances when they're not in the villages. So I just want you aware of those things, and I want them put on the record so that somebody that says if you cut a school, you're going to save $500,000, just by saying it doesn't make it so. And Scott's right, you need a management study, and you need to research that before somebody tells you that and they start down that road. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, Dorothy.
I actually was at the meeting, and I was so angry that I did not speak because I felt that I might say something that was inappropriate. In retrospect, I'm very disappointed because I believe that was an abuse of a position. When you are voted into an office by taxpayers and you have taxpayers attend a meeting, to chastise them and to tell them, I brought you all in here, but you know, we're not really going to do this, but I want to tell you that if you don't pass the budget, things are going to happen. That's a terrible thing to do to any voter, any taxpayer, because in our system, we expect people to come in, to vote, to express their beliefs and their feelings. All I can say to the people of all 3 towns is look very carefully at the people that you choose and the people that you vote for.
Thanks, Dorothy. Well said. Next on the agenda is to discuss and consider a proposed application to obtain low-cost financing from the Rhode Island Clean Water Finance Agency under the Municipal Road and Bridge Revolving Fund account for improvements to Dye Hill Road in the sum of $181,581.12. I just want to preface this agenda item with, I did get a complaint from someone that lives down there, obviously, and I realize the road is not in good shape. In between putting it on the agenda, Bill and I found out more information about how we have to go about to get the money. Basically, I put this on because the state had allocated some money for us, for our town, for road improvements. That got subsequently taken away in the budget. So we were left with nothing. So I said, well, geez, how are we going to provide some infrastructure improvements to the residents? And I thought, well, let's look into this fund. There's only $7 million, I guess, for the whole state. And I thought maybe finding out about how to access that money would be a good idea. Now, Bill will elaborate more on it as far as what we have to do to get this, but that just gives folks an idea of, I just think that losing the state funding for road improvements, I wanted to look in another direction. Certainly, we as a council can look to go through the CIP and fund it that way. That's certainly an option, but I just didn't know enough about this Clean Water Finance Agency to see if it's even a viable alternative to borrow money to do some infrastructure improvements, mainly roads. So that's kind of why I kept it on. Bill's got more information. You can share it with us. Thanks, Bill.
Sure, thank you. Basically, in the governor's budget, he had proposed $10 million as a grant to the individual cities and towns in Rhode Island. That was removed from the governor's budget, and instead a law was passed, the Municipal Road and Bridge Revolving Fund, and that was funded with approximately $7 million. On October 1st, when Laura Kenyon and I went to that seminar in Providence, unfortunately, we learned that this year the town of Hopkinton is going to be ineligible because you need to have the authority to borrow. You need borrowing authority. So we came back and we checked into a little bit, and we talked to our bond counsel, and it's not simply a case of a town council resolution. You actually have to have a warrant item that's presented at the financial town meeting, and then it's got to be approved through a vote or referendum. The one that we currently have for $1 million is to borrow money up to, I believe, $1.5 million for bond anticipation notes, but it doesn't extend for the specific purpose of like roadway construction. So we're out of the loop this year as far as applying for this money. However, it's a revolving fund, and what that means is that the interest that they collect as a result of loaning this money is added to the $7 million that they plan to appropriate next year. So it would be like, for example, $7.2 million. And I spoke with the solicitor's office and Laura Kenyon, and certainly it's a decision by the council, but perhaps next year, if we want to put it as a warrant item, and it passes the referendum, then we would be able to always have the right to borrow that money if we felt that we needed to do it. But we're just out of the picture this year. Now that presents another issue as to, and the goal here was Dye Hill Road. It's approximately just a little over 2 miles long, and it's really in deplorable condition. And probably the reason it is because it's a problem. The amount of drainage work that has to be done on that road is easily going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, plus the engineering study, engineering work, design work, and the actual cost of either chip sealing or asphalting the road. One thought was to not do the drainage work and just do the shimming and the chip sealing for $181,000. And if that was going to be too much during the budgetary process, perhaps they could divide that in half and do $90,000 one fiscal year and approximately $90,000 the other. I mean, that's a thought. That would be you wouldn't be able to start that project for 2 years. It would be 2 years away. But even if you borrowed the money the following year, and we had the authority to do it, it's still basically a loan. And I think that program is really geared for cities and towns that are in dire financial straits and don't have the money in their budget or their CIP that would be able to pay for something like that. So they borrow it, and then, they run it over a 20-year program, which is more affordable for them. But I'm not sure that that's the way Hopkinton wants to go, so I just throw that out to the council, yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Sylvia.
Bill, if I remember, weren't we thinking around $1 million for that die hill, if you did everything? The drainage?
It's actually more than that.
It was more than that?
It could be, yeah,
Yeah,
just million, it could even go more. Just the engineering study to determine the amount of drainage work that needs to be done is $25,000. And past projections by the former DPW bring it anywhere from, $400,000 to $800,000 for the drainage work. Then you got the catch basins, and then you've got the, the shimming and either the asphalt or the chip sealing. My guess is probably right around there or a little bit more.
I think we should wait for better times.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just want to point out, that Doug Reese had before he had left the town's employment in July of 2010, gave a rough idea back then of what 2 miles of correctly repaired road would cost between drainage, catch basins, engineering, and drainage costs. For 2 miles, it's $1.8 million. That's to do it properly. So, I know it's a lot of money. I'm not in favor of certainly getting into that expense. It's too cost prohibitive. But what I did talk to Bill about was, chip sealing a portion of it in one budget season and a portion in another possibly, again, with the council's consent. I just think the road is in tough shape, and I think there are ways to perhaps fix it without too much trouble. And, and I'm not expecting us to go into the extent of properly preparing it with all the catch basins and drainage. It's just too cost prohibitive. And I also had asked Laura to prepare a debt service schedule for us. I don't know if anybody looked at that, but there are two pieces of it that are kind of expiring in the fiscal years 15 and 16, which is the landfill and public safety. Well, I know, I'm just pointing out that it's going to free up, that's $93,000 in debt service. So, even if we had to possibly go in that direction, again, I'm just throwing it out there because, I do live down there. I've been in town 15 years, and the road's a mess. There are a lot of expensive homes around there. I just think it's worth at least kicking the tires and finding out what it's going to cost and how we can achieve it. And I think based on the debt service schedule that I see, our town's debt schedule, revising the interest estimates for the land trust is $361 for this next coming year, and that's very, very reasonable considering our revenues are around $5.6 million. So anyway, I think it's something worth exploring based on that debt service expiring. But yeah, Barbara.
I think that both options may be able to be done. It seems to me, Bill, that we should be able to look at the CIP and put money aside each year specifically for Die Hill Road. It's $181,000 to chip seal effectively. That's $90,000 per year. At the same time, we can do the warrant item to do the revolving fund so that if we had that on top of the money we already have put aside, so that if in 2 years when we want to do it, we're also able to borrow the 181 or another 180,000, we may be able to get some of the drainage done or at least some of the studies done, and we're moving Die Hill Road forward. If not, if it's still only 181,000 to chip seal and shim the road, and I'm assuming that lasts at least 5 or 6 years, even if we had to do it every 5 or 6 years, that's 200,000 a pop, not $1.8 million. So I think that Die Hill needs to be moved forward on a number of levels. One is the warrant item. I think that probably makes good sense on the revolving fund, although I doubt Hopkinton will ever see that money. It's probably for the towns that can't afford anything. And I think we need it in our CIP so we can at least move it forward year to year. But chip sealing and shimming may be our alternative if we can't do all the drainage, or at least we can do it in with this new stormwater management, perhaps we'll be able to roll some of that over as well. But I think we should do both ways. And I know we're looking at the debt service, but we do have Land Trust coming forward fast and furious, so it's not as available as it may be.
But that's not as prevalent as it was initially anticipated.
Correct,
so.
correct, and I think that's great. But I think we should move ahead on a couple of different fronts and then see where we are in a year, because the drainage is outrageous.
Yeah, it's just too cost prohibitive.
But it still needs to be chip seal, still needs to be so people can actually drive on the road, even if it collapses.
Not lose a hub tire.
Yeah.
David, do you have any?
One other comment, the individual that complained, I sent back up because I wanted to have a discussion with him about this, and his complaint followed after we did Fairview Avenue, and it made sense. You know, one individual wrote to us, you know, Fairview Avenue got done and it's nice and pretty, and their road is awful, and of course, they found out it was a grant. But I did ask him if he'd send along his telephone number so we could have a chat on the phone, and he never followed through, and we've never heard back from him since. So I just wanted to point out that I think we need to explore all these avenues to try to figure out how we can get to it. But I have to say that all of those folks in those beautiful homes, they all moved in, and that road is awful.
Yeah.
And they're not complaining because they pay taxes too.
Yeah.
All right, but I think,
So
you
we'll
know,
do the best we can.
you can't assume that everyone's happy with it.
No,
I
of
mean,
course
I'm
not.
certainly not,
Of
and I
course
drive
not.
on it infrequently,
But
so.
it's like
course not.
Woodville, it's like Woodville Alton, if we fix it, people will go faster. Right now, they have to go slow, they have no choice.
That's true.
I think it's in tough shape, and I think,
It is in
I think
tough
it
shape.
deserves at least,
Silver lining.
present some options.
Yes.
Next budget
Exactly.
season, so,
I know that just out of an issue of fairness, I know that our DPW director, I asked him to come tonight, he's not in favor of repairing the road while the drainage work, and he's probably right, but unfortunately, the cost of the drainage work is like cost prohibitive, and to spend over $1 million on 2 miles of road is something that we really just can't afford to do. But I asked him to come tonight if...
I'd like to hear him.
Tim, yeah, please.
We'd like to hear your comments, whether we can afford it or not. Tell us the truth.
Oh, we know that. He's gonna tell us what he'd like to do.
Okay, we can get a cost estimate of what really needs to be done from our engineer, I had a preliminary report done this spring. They didn't give me much information, but they told me about what it's going to cost, like $25,000 for the drainage. Now, I don't know, he said there are different options. This may be in the hundreds of thousands, it may not, depending on what we're capable of doing ourselves. So I think it would be, before we decide we're just going to chip seal and put stuff over the top of it, because I've seen water come down up past Woody Hill, right down Dye Hill, and just rip that road up. Now, you can throw chip seal on it, and it'll still rip it up.
I
comes down through there.
grew up down that
So we
street,
could do
yeah.
that, and, you know, we'd just be wasting our time. I think it would at least be worth getting the engineer's study and see what they recommend for drainage. And if it's stuff we could do ourselves, we could save a lot of money. And maybe at that point, piecemeal the road if we have to. But I think at least the hill right there, when you come down from Woody Hill, the water comes flying down through there, and it's Taylor Road. And if you talk from Skunk Hill coming down toward Fairview Avenue, the subsurface of that road, especially if you're going up the hill on the left, is so bad, you can drive up in the wet season, and I have seen it, you're driving up through, and the whole road is just moving right up and down, because the water comes all the way up from the dirt part of Skunk Hill. It does not come up anywhere, it comes straight down that road. In years past, the water obviously could run off because you didn't have all the houses through there. They put all the houses, so water's got to go somewhere, so I don't mind trying to fix a road with chip seal, but you know, it's not the best answer on that road without at least looking at what it costs for drainage.
Yeah, but Tim, I mean, I've got an estimate from Doug from 2010, and it adds up to $1.8 million to do it correctly. Now, you know, that's just totally not even in the ballpark.
Nope.
I mean, we can't, that's 2010 figures. So I'm just wondering if it's even worth it to spend, how much did the engineering tell you how much it would cost?
It costs $25 for the engineer to see.
Well, yeah, that's 14% of the.
But I could throw an estimate out at you at $2 million.
We should do it.
Until we actually see what it's going to cost, we don't know.
Yeah, but you know how much it takes to chip seal 2 miles of road.
Yep.
You know that cost, right? And I think that's what the 181 consists of, right?
Yeah, but like I say, it may not be that bad, and to make a road that's going to last more than 3 or 4 years, it might be worth it.
But if you spend the 25 and he says, well, the drainage is $500,000, and we're not going to do that, what's the point of having an engineering?
Because sooner or later, we're going to have to fix the road right, and if we have the engineering study, we have it.
Yeah, but you have
Once,
something.
once we do an engineering study is good for 20 years, I would think, because the road's not going anyplace, it's the same
It
problem.
might take us that long.
Might take us 20 years.
But that's okay.
But the studies.
We'll get it done
When we're
right.
ready to do something with the road, we've got the study right in our hand, or, you know, I'm willing to spend 25,000 to get this thing engineered up.
Yeah.
And then we can put it in our back pocket.
If
When
we-
we need it, we pull
And
it
also
out.
you-
He's right, if we can't right now, and if we do have to chip seal it, then maybe, you know, within a couple of years, if we have to, we can start fixing some if we have to, or maybe we can do some before, but
We need more information.
Exactly.
exactly, I think the more
Exactly.
information, exactly.
And the thing is, then you might be able to do a small drainage problem here and solve it, and a small one over there and solve it, and then chip seal in pieces.
Right, it's
I
not
think-
like it used to be in the past,
Yeah.
where there was no house, you just scrape off the side of the road, all right, the water can go through there, that's not a problem. You can't do that anymore, and that's what our issues are. We have to have an engineer to say where we can legally put the water in. It's just,
Yeah, but do you guys know that, I guess?
we can't do the study, we
No,
can do,
no,
we can do
obviously.
some of the basic work a lot of times, and that, you know, especially a little bit at a time if we had to. I mean, I know we can't afford $1 million, $2 million to go out and do this, but we'd probably do some here and there if we had to, and then we hire, like in the past, when we've needed excavators to do certain areas, we brought them in, and
Do you think you folks could do some parts of that estimate on the drainage piece at all?
an estimate?
Yeah,
No,
okay,
because we don't have the legality of where we can put the water.
okay,
I mean, I could say, yeah, we can put the pipe in down there, we can put a pipe in, and it'll work perfect.
okay.
And the next week, I'm gonna have somebody knocking at the door, you turn the water onto my area, take it out there, and here's my lawyer's number. I can't
All
do
right, so
that.
all right.
You know, I just can't.
And that can be part of the CIP, is the 25,000 to try to do the drainage
That's
anyway.
right.
We could put that on a
Engineering.
CIP plan.
Yeah, sure.
And then maybe we really could do parts and pieces of it. And if we have access to that loan revolving fund, at some point, we might be able to get a larger piece done.
Once we get the engineering, you know, whatever, it's
Study.
written up thing.
Study.
Okay, thank you. Then we can say, okay, here's the most damaging areas, you know, the places where the road just keeps crumbling away. This is where we really need to put the drainage. So that maybe we could set up a schedule where we want to do 10% of the drains this year, 10% every year, until we get 10 years worth of drains and drainage in there and all the work that has to be done. But we start at the worst spots first, because I'm sure there's other spots that they should be done, but they aren't imperative. There's other spots, you know, that hill, for example, I've run up that hill, that's no fun.
I was told it was broken up into 3 parts.
Yeah,
And of course, the hills, obviously, in the middle.
yeah, so I think.
Believe me, I want the road done as much as everybody else. I'm on that road a lot myself. And the people do complain, they call me steady. And
Yeah,
Do you think once the areas are identified as far as drainage, that you guys can do some portion of that, I guess, or does that have to be subcontracted out?
I think we could do some, yeah, we could do some of
So
it.
you might be able to save in that regard?
Yeah.
Possibly? Okay.
But, you know, as time permits, obviously, we have other things, but
Oh, yeah.
we do small projects as we
Yeah.
can, and it saves money.
Right, it's only 2 miles of road, so I don't, how many,
Only 2
Well,
Only
miles
2
long.
miles.
but how many, if you were to estimate, you know, this is your work, you know what, how many drainage spots would you indicate if you were to guess, Tim? Give me a rough idea, I mean, you know the road.
Nope.
Give me a figure.
Nope.
Doesn't work.
I know, I'm going to be lying if I tell you. Until they come
Is
on.
it 5 or is it 50?
Jen and Jack.
I'm still not going to tell you, I just don't know. And I would be lying to you if I told you, and I'm not going to lie to you.
Tim, you know a rough idea.
I don't know. I don't know, there are a lot of different types of
I'll
designs they
send
can
you
put
an
in.
email.
Frank, you're
Out to breakfast, he's still gonna say, I don't
not
know.
gonna get it from him, Frank.
There are a lot of different designs, and I really don't know which one they plan on.
Not gonna-
You might get a breakfast out of it, though.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to spend money on breakfast if I'm not going to have an answer.
Be cheap.
Anyway, Bill McGarry,
Just one final comment. The real expense is what to do with the water. That's where the money comes in, the drainage, just like on South Drive. It's costing us $100,000 to get rid of the water, and that's just on one spot. So if they've got multiple spots on Dye Hill Road, I mean, there's a lot of private property. We just can't have that water running off into private
Right,
property.
call
We just
Arizona.
can't have it run off to the side of the road. We have to control the outflow of water into some type of drainage retention area, or what we're doing at South Drive, according to DEM regulations. And DEM is, you know, they're pretty strict on that with the permits and everything. So it's a very comprehensive project that could result in a considerable
Well, I
cost.
think we should call Arizona and New Mexico, all the places that need water, and have them come out here and get it. It's fine with us.
Well, I'll look forward to working with the Public Works, the manager, and trying to get some kind of engineering study possibly going. I just want to kind of move forward on this. This thing's been a mess for many, many years, and we need to kind of get some kind of identification of what to do and what not to do. So I look forward to that. Thanks, Tim. Thanks. Okay, I didn't get my answer.
Not going to either.
Okay, so
Not on
anyway.
that one, not on that one.
Next on the agenda, sorry to keep you folks waiting, discuss and consider approving the town's proposed stormwater management plan for submission to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. I think we have Mr. Riordan and Mr. Lampier, our planner.
have to vote or anything?
No,
No.
it was just a discussion.
You want to give us a quick synopsis of what's before us, I guess,
Sure.
tonight?
Absolutely. First, thanks for having me out this evening. This is a plan that's designed to comply with DEM regulations. These are federally mandated, a federally mandated program. And the town was fortunate enough to get a $25,000 grant to put the plan together. So it's essentially been at no cash cost to the town. This is the plan. You received copies of it as PDFs on September 3rd or thereabouts. And tonight we're going to review it. The plan covers 6 minimum measures. These include public education, public and outreach, public involvement, something called illicit discharge detection elimination, construction control management measure, post-construction management measure, and good housekeeping and pollution prevention. The implementation of the plan is not currently required. However, DEM anticipates that you'll be regulated, the town of Hopkinton will be regulated sometime within the foreseeable future. They don't have a specific time frame, but we're probably looking at a year or two. So this is essentially getting the town ready for this program that you're going to have to do in the near future anyways. A lot of the things that are required in the plan you do already. Tim takes care of them through his Public Works Department, doing regular maintenance on the stormwater system. There are a few items that you need to incorporate or that need to get implemented at some point in the future. One of those items is mapping the storm drainage system. That includes mapping the outfalls, mapping the catch basins, the manholes, et cetera. And through this project, this is something that we worked with the town DPW staff, as well as Matt Damaris, the GIS coordinator, to show them how to do this in accordance with the state and federal requirements. So town staff is trained up on how to do the mapping part of this. Another item that the town will have to do as part of implementation is adoption of 3 ordinances. There's an illicit discharge prohibition, construction ordinance, which is similar to soil erosion sediment control, and a post-construction ordinance. These have all been drafted as part of this project on behalf of the town. Again, adoption doesn't have to take place immediately. You can wait until you're required by the state to do that. Additionally, at the end of last week, put together a memo that indicated some minor changes that needed to happen to the stormwater management plan. These were things that were identified since the plan was given to you with staff members in the town. And you should have all received a memo, a couple of pages long, that indicates what those things were. They were relatively minor changes. There was one item at the end of that memo that discusses the soil erosion sediment control ordinance, because it was brought to our attention that there was some concern about whether the building official should be the one who is responsible for doing that work or not. The reason why we indicated the building official in the draft ordinance was because there's state enabling legislation that specifically states they have to. And a copy of that legislation was provided with that memo. With that, the last thing I think I want to mention is that when it does come time to implement this program, that the general permit term associated with this program has a 5-year period. 1 year is for developing the plan. You've already done that. And then the last 4 years are for implementation. And there's a synopsis of the schedule of implementation and a timeline that was provided in the cover memo that went along with the materials that were sent out September 3rd. So that in a nutshell is the plan. There is one last thing I'd like to mention, which is that Jim Lamphere received an email from Margarita Chatterton, who is one of the state officials involved with implementing this program and reviewing plans. She reviewed the draft plan and said that essentially the town was in good shape to go forward with the federal and state requirements. So that's not the same thing as getting the plan approved, but it sounds good for the approval once this formally gets transmitted to the state.
Thanks, Mr. Riordan. If you want to just hang on there for a bit,
Sure.
in case any of the council folks have any comments or suggestions. Scott, you want to start it off?
No, I have nothing. I know it's a big issue, and I still got a lot to learn on it, but it is what it is. We're always talking about water, and it's so expensive dealing with it.
Thanks, Scott. Sylvia?
I have to say, as a counselor who's been around long enough, I appreciate the work your firm does. We're very appreciative, and we know you know our town, and we're glad of it. And this is just another example of your good work product. And I know you got to work with a lot of our employees to pull this together too. So, but I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Thompson.
Yeah, I do. I actually have questions, but I also think you've done a great job, and I'm really glad you did it. I wanted to say on that last portion, on the draft ordinance refers to the building official as the authorized enforcement. I think that's absolutely correct. I can't think of anyone else other than Public Works who would be able to do that, and certainly the building official is the correct choice. So I'm really glad you have that in no uncertain terms. I have a question, please, on the proposed changes to the Hopkinton Swamp, number 2. The second paragraph of
Can you
section...
tell us what page it is?
Yeah, it's on this Hopkinton Stormwater Management Plan, first page.
October 2nd
So
memo.
it's on this
October
memo.
2nd
Oh, in the memo.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
memo,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there were 19 items listed.
Yes, there was. This is number 2. On the second paragraph of section 8.4.6 is to be reworded to indicate that garbage is brought to a dumpster at the Crandall House rather than at the DPW complex. Why is that? Crandall is full of children. We have children everywhere. I mean, Crandall Field is major recreation and people and dogs, and I don't know why we have garbage brought to the Crandall House rather than DPW, unless it's something I'm not aware of.
Yeah, it's the, I believe that was just for the Crandall Field. They originally had that all the trash that was from the Crandall complex was brought up to the DPW, but we actually have our own dumpster down there.
Oh, okay,
So that's
so
what that
it's-
just specifies, that the trash from the Crandall complex stays down there in a dumpster.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I just didn't, I thought maybe we were taking it from the rest of town and bringing it to Crandall House for some reason. All right, thank you, that does answer that one. And then on 16, 17, and 18, we're talking about the responsible parties for these different categories. The GIS is added to one, town planner to another, and DPW to another. Can you just tell me what the responsible party is to which items?
To read the item, in other words?
Yeah, what is it, 16, 17, and 18 on your,
So
your
it
memo?
refers to the Roman, or the alphanumeric with the Roman
Right.
numerals, refers to a part of the general permit.
Right, but what is
And
the GIS department being
let
added
me,
as a responsible party to? Because I tried looking it up and I couldn't find it, because it's huge.
3B1. So 3B1 is part of illicit discharge detection and elimination. And the small b1 refers to develop an outfall map, including locations of outfalls that discharge to the SRPWs, the ONRWs.
Okay, so that's making a map for that particular
Exactly.
area. And I assume the next one is making a map for that particular section.
Little different, essentially the same thing. Under this program, you, as a town, you have a choice as to whether to map all these outfalls using GIS or whether to tag them with some sort of medallion or some sort of permanent tag.
Okay,
So
you
you
could
can
do it
choose one or
either
the
way.
other.
So-
Yeah, and you would do the mapping. Most
All right.
towns do.
Okay, and the second, number 17, the town planner is added to 5.1.
Yeah, so 5.1 is drinking water supplies, special habitat areas, recreational areas, and regulated waterways should be given high priority due to the high recreational value of these areas.
So the planner is basically responsible for
Essentially policy that might be associated with that.
something to encourage drinking water at recreational facilities.
Right, protection of those waters. So mostly that, in your case, that would be done through public education.
And the planning department would take care of that
That's right.
effectively. Okay, and the DPW is to be added, number 18, as a responsible party also to, is that also the drinking water one?
That's right.
So what are they responsible for?
Reminding myself for a moment. Part of this involves investigation of potential illicit discharges, if any existed. And if there was potential for illicit discharges, then the DPW might have to trace back up the stormwater lines in order to do
But then would they
that.
also talk to the building inspector who would enforce it? Because they would just do the investigation and somebody else is enforcing the problem?
So for illicit discharges, since the town owns the storm drain system, and since DPW is responsible for that storm drainage system, the DPW director has enforcement authority for making sure that these illicit discharges are removed from the
So
line.
he's the enforcement person here instead of the public building official?
On this particular issue, yeah. So the thing that the building official is primarily responsible for is soil erosion sediment control, and new developments and redevelopments.
Okay.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yes, sir.
David?
No, I'm just glad it's done. I'm glad we're ahead of the curve. Very, very glad of those kind of things. So thank you very much for a good job.
Thank
Jim,
you very
I just
much.
had a couple quick things. So I guess
Sure.
we would potentially approve it before we're regulating, right?
Right.
That's right.
Okay. And we don't have to do anything with the ordinances until the state regulates us, I guess, right?
That's correct.
So I have a motion to approve.
Well, hold on, Bob.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. There's your summary of September 3rd. I just had a quick question. September 3rd summary for the Hopkinton Stormwater Management Plan, page 2, and it continues on page 3. Of the 8 items listed on the bottom,
The
of the
bullet
8,
items.
I guess, Jim, which ones are we kind of doing now anyway? Do you know?
Sure.
I know that we're probably doing some stormwater management. We're doing the catch basins. I'm not sure which ones DPW is doing now versus once this is going forward, how much they'd have to take on going forward. Can you
Sure.
answer that maybe?
Sure. So I'll read through them one by one
Yeah.
and let you know where you stand. So the first one, correct, and let me know if somehow I'm on the wrong spot. Oversight of
Yeah.
construction projects. Oversight of construction projects and review of stormwater management plans creating greater than 1 acre of soil disturbance. Currently, you're not fully doing that. There is a requirement in your subdivision regulations that says that you have to follow what at DEM they refer to as the Red Book. That was the preliminary document that then turned into the Soil Erosion Sediment Control Handbook. So that particular requirement is somewhat out of date, but the construction ordinance or the soil erosion ordinance that was drafted would bring that up to date, and then the building official would be responsible for that.
Good deal.
Inspection of regulated construction sites. Again, I think with subdivisions and even for some building permit activity, the town does some of this already. I'd have to say not 100%, but you are doing some of it through the building official. Identification of existing stormwater infrastructure. I was actually pleased to find that a fair amount of that had been done already. Tim and Matt and Jim had already identified most of the catch basins and manholes and some of the outfalls. So there's some more of that that needs to get done, but you've already started on that too. Development of outfall mapping, that'd be done along with the mapping of and identification of the other stormwater infrastructure. Annual street sweeping, you do basically do that.
Near and dear to our
New
heart.
new sweeper in the springtime.
Okay, next,
I need that new sweeper, Tim, I'm watching you.
inspection of catch basins.
Can I ask something real quick? Are you guys intending to purchase a new sweeper?
Oh, yes, yes, this spring, it was supposed to be in the fall.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking is that there is supposed to be grant money coming out from DEM, and in the past, although we're not sure what it'll be this time, but in the past, equipment purchases, sometimes like street sweepers, have been eligible, so.
So Tim,
something we'll look at a little bit.
maybe make a mental note.
Yeah, as long as it's not 5 years from now.
No, exactly.
The only other problem with that I've seen, if you don't mind,
Sure.
is, I know generally when they want to do that, they want the regenerative air sweepers, stuff like
vacuum
that,
sweepers.
and the vacuum sweepers, which do not work very well on rural roads.
You get exactly what we need.
No, because they tend to tear up. I know there's a couple other towns, as a matter of fact, Richmond had one, and Exeter had one, and they just don't work well. They tear up the roads, and they're not good at all.
Well, I think it's worth exploring.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
just
definitely
maybe
would.
poke
Sure.
around and see if
That's-
that's the case, but
That's fine.
we'll trust you on which one to buy. but
It's just something to keep in mind,
Yeah.
trust me.
Thanks.
Spring.
Catch
All right.
basins, I think we're doing, right?
Inspection of catch basins and manholes, that's a little different than identifying them and mapping them, but as part of this project, we showed the DPW folks how to do that in compliance with the requirements here. And so they even have inspection sheets and an Excel spreadsheet that would help them keep track of that stuff. Completion of 2 dry weather outfall surveys. So after you identify the outfalls, you're supposed to go out and do this thing called a dry weather survey. I'm not going to get into the details of that, save you guys that trouble, but that's something that you haven't done yet, but that's something that you would do in the future. Adoption of illicit discharge prohibition, construction management, and post-construction management ordinances. You have those in draft at this point, so when you're ready to go with those, they're ready for you.
Great. Wunderbar.
Okay, so you think the plan's in pretty good shape?
It seems to be. They responded back. We got this letter, or this email back from Margarita Chatterton that said, the plan should put the town in a good position to address future federal and state requirements for local stormwater management programs. Slightly south of approving the plan, but pretty close.
Okay. Well, I guess if anyone doesn't have any more comments or
Yeah.
suggestions,
Motion to approve town's proposed stormwater management plan for submission to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management.
okay, do we have a
Second.
second? Thank you, Sylvia.
You're welcome.
Motion made and seconded. Any other further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Fabulous.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so
Thanks very
much.
much.
Thank you very much.
We like having you.
I like working with you guys. Great.
No, it's because we're a good town.
And I do have to say, it was really a pleasure to work with Bill and Tim and Jim and Matt. They're all very professional, excellent people to work with.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can have some of our water, we don't mind. We have a lot. That's why we don't have a dry weather one. We still have a high water table.
Next on the agenda is to consider a proclamation designating November 2013 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. Lisa had sent me a note, I guess the town of Richmond, the clerk, I guess, wanted us to
Yes.
adopt a similar resolution, right?
With a copy of her email. It appears that it is near and dear to her heart. It is a terrible disease, and she asked that we typed up the proclamation and made it specific to Hopkinton, then the only changes to insert the word Hopkinton, and it's ready for you to consider if you want.
So moved.
Second, it
Okay.
really is an awful disease.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Motion to adjourn.
Public forum.
Last public forum. Anyone out there
Pat,
wishing
you
to
have
be
anything to
heard?
say?
Motion to adjourn, please?
Mr. President, I
Yes.
make a motion that we adjourn in memory of the late George H. Whedon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
Second, okay. Motion made second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.